Hi, my name is Brian from Denmark, your tech friend, and this is a comparison between the Sony Xperia 1 Mark III and the iPhone 13 Pro, parentheses, Max. And the Max because it is almost the same phone. The Max has just a bigger screen, 6.7 inches versus this one of 6.1 inches and a bigger battery. So they are comparable. And in this video, of course, the comparison, it goes between these two phones. First of all, I'll look at the physics of these phones, and then I'll run you through some specs of these two phones, and at the very end, I'll tell you my own experiences with these two phones. I've had this one for 2 weeks and this one for 1 week. Let's do this. Okay, but let's take a look at the physics of these two phones. You can see they have a 3-camera backside setup, and I'll come back to that later. And then you have this kind of matte finish on the Sony Xperia 1, but it is extremely slippery, whereas it's actually more grippy with the iPhone 13 Pro. Then you have these, both of them have these kind of relatively square sides. Sony has a little bit of curvature to it, but let me just take you through some of the specs. You have USB-C on the Sony and a mic on the bottom, and then on the iPhone you have a mic, a lightning USB, and then you have a stereo speaker. Stereo, of course, because the other one is situated right at the very top, which is the same for the Sony. And then the major difference, of course, being that the Sony has a 3.5mm jack at the very top, whereas the iPhone has none of that. On the sides, you have the silent button, you have volume up, down, and you have a SIM tray on the iPhone. And on the Sony, you have volume up and down, this very little button up here. It's a bit annoying actually, because it should have been somewhat bigger. Then you have fingerprint authentication on the side, as well as power button. You have the Google Assistant right there, very long into the chassis, so you don't press it by accident. That's brilliant. And then of course you have the Sony dedicated camera button. Let's just try and press it, and there we go. That's always a very nice touch. And finally, on the other side of the iPhone, you have the power on off button. On the very top, you can see the selfie camera is actually built into the bezel of the Sony. Right at the very top, you can just see it, whereas on the iPhone, it has this big cutout. Okay, and then let me just run you through some of the specs of these two guys. The Sony was released on August 25th of 2021, and the iPhone was released on September the 24th. They weigh approximately the same, 186 grams on the Sony, and the Pro version of 204. Of course, the Pro Max weighs, I think it was about 30 grams more even to the 204. So that's around 240 grams. That's a bit of a brick in your pocket. That's what she said. No. Both are IP68 certified. And then the Pro model of this iPhone has got that 5 GPU cores instead of just the 4 cores on the regular iPhone 13 and the iPhone mini. In the base model of the iPhone, you only get 6 GB of memory and 120 GB of internal storage, whereas it's 12 GB of RAM and 256 gigs of internal storage on the Sony. And the last thing I'm going to say about these two phones is, of course, they have different battery sizes. This one, the Xperia, has a 4,500 mAh, as this one only got 3,095 mAh. That is very suspiciously low, but of course Apple has this entire integrated system of all apps and stuff, so they can optimize on this, both the battery life and the RAM. And in regard to the differences between the CPUs and GPUs, let me just read you aloud some specs from Nano Review. Okay, key differences. Pros of the Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 has 2 more cores, okay? And now the pros of the Apple A15 Bionic, higher GPU frequency, upwards of 80%. And now it's 10 months later, that's not really something. 13% higher CPU clock speed. Yes, but you can see it here where it's just put up on a graph. You can see the difference is not enormous when you compare it in gaming. And that is, of course, always something you gotta put into mind. There are numbers and then there are reality, right? So those are different things. Okay, so this is a selfie video on the Sony Xperia 1 Mark III and the iPhone 13 Pro. As you can see, they crop very differently. Let's just walk around here so you can also get an idea of the stabilization at least. Okay, and this is a test of stabilization on the back camera on both of these phones. We're shooting in 4K, 30 frames a second, directly into the sun, which of course makes it even more difficult for these two phones to compose the pictures and make anything reasonable out of it. So we're really pushing them. As I said, the iPhone has got built-in stabilization automatically, and for the Sony you can turn it on or off, and right now it's on. This is the camera setup on the Sony. As you can see here, there's the standard, there's the wide lens, there's the zoom lens, and there's the zoom lens even more zoomed in. Then you can toggle this top one, and you can toggle between the different manual exposure, shutter speed, auto adjust, auto. On the Sony I can't switch from the lenses. If I choose one lens I could switch the zoom, how much 3 times zoom. But if I choose one lens, the wide lens, it stays on that lens when I'm recording. This is just, I'm short for words. Whereas on the iPhone I can now switch and in recording to the different lenses. So. And now for my own experiences with these two phones. I've been using the Sony for 2 weeks. And I must say, it is very hard for me to say anything positive about it. The screen is nice. The screen is really, really nice. And it's not a phone like every other because of the ratio aspect of 21:9. It takes good pictures, no doubt about it. The selfie camera is a big letdown though. In gaming, it is unfortunately a big letdown, this phone, because, well, not because, but you would have thought that it would be a great gaming experience because of the nice sound from the speakers and the ratio aspect of the screen. But it gets so hot, and that is of course because of the Snapdragon 888. And when I say it gets hot, I mean if you're running demanding titles like Asphalt, Call of Duty, PUBG, those kind of games, and not if you're playing Heyday, you're good to go. Yeah, so I really would have liked and loved to say something really, really positive about this phone, but it's so hard for me because it's been a letdown. And you know, then there's camera. Of course, the camera app, I can just show you. The standard camera down here at the bottom, the camera app, I can just show you real quick. It has this toggle switch up here, and then you can toggle the different settings as you know them if you're a photographer, between these auto and their various shutter speeds and manuals and stuff. And then it has this Cinema Pro app. You can again toggle various things. You can toggle here between some different filters, and you can toggle frame rate, you can toggle the lenses. That's pretty nice, you know that of course. If you're a photographer, you choose different lenses. But then again, my problem with that experience was that I consider myself as being an amateur photographer. If I try to set up a good picture with this phone with all these settings and various stuff, then it will take me like a minute to 2 minutes perhaps, right? The thing is, if I just turn this phone on and point and shoot, I'll get a picture that is like 90 to 95% the same with this phone, instead of going into all those camera antics of the Sony Xperia. So why would I want to use a minute to 2 to make that nice shot, or even longer, when I can get the same shot with it in a second or 2 on the iPhone, or just in the basic app of the Sony Xperia? So I don't think that's a plus for the Xperia, unfortunately. This phone has no pluses in comparison with the iPhone 13, and I must say the difference is like not night and day. They're both phones, you know, but it is enormous. This is totally another experience all the way through. They've taken the brilliant camera that was in the iPhone 12 Pro, and just made it even better. It's an extraordinary phone, this, and the after processing that goes on to in every picture is just insane. It makes every picture look stunning, and it has the best video quality as you've seen. It is just so hard to like put a thumb down on this phone. If you are considering iOS, or if you are in iOS environment, you should stay on this phone by all means. But if you're considering Jumping to iOS over like an Android phone or something, I would still say no, because it's like Christianity and Islam. They're not really that easy comparable. Though we have the same, was it Abraham or something? There was some old people that was the same. But, and that could be the phone call, for instance. They're very different, these phones. And if you're doing a direct comparison of these two phones, I can't recommend this phone under any circumstances. And this is just brilliant, exclusive feel and touch and phone you can own, and you got the best. You got the fastest CPU, you got the fastest GPU, you got the best camera, you got the best video. It plays better PUBG and demanding tasks than this phone, so Apple have really pulled in front now as it is. These phones, remember, these phones are only 1 month apart in release dates, so it's kind of a hard blow, I would say, to the Sony Xperia 1 Mark III. And finally, just to give them like a score, a compatibility score, if we consider this to be the best out there right now, I'll give this a 10 out of 10. And where we are with the Sony, I'll give that like a 6 out of 10. Because it's still a reasonably good phone, so it's not super bad, but it's just greatly disappointing in regard to my expectations of that phone. And in this comparison, it's truly well beaten. If you enjoyed the content of this video, please do press like and comment and subscribe. My name is Brian from Denmark, your tech friend, and I'll see you in the next one.